Okay, simple to Please don't make me go back to the main menu. Ethanol pirate ship. Midas's touch, bro. Meteor storm. Pebble Key. Okay. Yeah, no, very disappointing. Hospital. Let's see. I says lock it. Wait, guys, I gotta try this. I had to turn off the menu. I don't know if it's copyrighted strike. SS Locket. Guys, I gotta quickly load it up. Wait, can I get Bob? Gonna drive me crazy. Let's see. Gonna drive me. So bad, okay? Power. Wait, what if I shoot it? Actually, I don't know what it's saying. What if I... That's not bad, not bad. I would say it's okay for that map. I think it's cool for the boat, but meh. Abandoned chemical lead. Okay. Guess we upgrade to abandoned. Just a second. Okay. I thought. 1 second. Okay. I'm trying to see. Not cars. I want cars to chase me. I really like fire material. Okay, let's try all the mods though. And now I gotta do everything again. Functional camera. Frenchtown Part 2. Okay. We can finally, finally, we can finally. Let's. Okay. Okay. I might be changing my mind on this update. This update might be the best update, but I actually been playing this game since it released on console. And you know, in my opinion, this is one of the best games. In my opinion, for physics, even though some people don't like it. God mode. Hell yeah. I had to turn off high tech drone because it got so annoying in the game. Because when you actually click on it, it spawns in, and it's like it should say, "You want to turn this on? Yes or no?" But let me check. Let me test. Let's check Frenchtown too. In 2 more minutes, after I review it, I'm gonna might pause the stream right now. I think this is not. This is more like Battlefield 1. this. We can get all these. One second. Okay, I need to be back. Okay, I'm back. Right is very old underground. I'm gonna take this. Maybe this will change. That's okay. This map is okay. Maybe. It's better now. Bunker Buster. I'll turn on. Okay, I'm back. So beautiful. So beautiful. Hello?
Hi, what do you have for supper tonight?
I'm having my mom. Going to my mom's.
Oh, are you? Okay. I'm going to be tonight, probably 7. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, I'll see you when you get home. You love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.
I will be back in 20 minutes. Alright, guys, I'll be back in 20 in 5 minutes. All right. All right. I'll be back in 5. I will eat and be back. Oh, I'll be back in maybe 10 minutes. Hopefully 10. All right, I'm back. See you in the mall. I don't want to play.
On December 17, 2018, parents in Houston woke to the
This is
haunting sound
this is called 5 Disturbing Home Security Cams Hackings
stranger's voice and
by Chilling
called
Skitters.
3, threatening to kidnap their son and ordering them to turn off the bedroom lights.
Turned that camera on and told us, said, turn off the light, and then said, I'm going to kidnap your baby. I'm in your baby's room.
In every single case, Ness responded by blaming the customers. So, why did this keep happening? You see, Nest had quietly added two-factor authentication back in 2017 and barely told anyone. Arjun didn't even know the feature existed because Nest never told him. It took until May 2020, well over a year after all of this happened, for the company to finally make it mandatory, which feels like a quiet admission that leaving the security entirely to the customer was never going on. But for Arjun, the scariest part was how the hacker this game was gave him a real warning that someone else was watching the feed. A handful of small blue lights switch on after someone talking. A hacker could watch and listen for hours, and the family would never know. The only reason the suits knew they'd been compromised was because the hacker chose to speak. In the end, the hacker was never identified, and no arrest was ever made. On the afternoon of April 23, 2020, Shauna Dottie received a phone call from her home security company, ADT. They had called to tell her that for the last 6 years, every dollar she had paid them to keep her family safe had done the exact opposite. Back in 2014, Shauna and her husband Randy were living with their young son in the suburbs of the Dallas-Fort Worth area and wanted the peace of mind to keep an eye on the house from anywhere. ADT's Pulse system, with indoor cameras, motion alerts, and a cell phone app, sounded like exactly what they were after. A few weeks after they placed the order, a technician from ADT showed up at their front door. He looked at the layout and mounted a wide-angle indoor camera that covered most of the ground floor, the family room, the entryway, the dining area, and the staircase. The lens also reached into the master bedroom and the corner of the bathroom. He walked Shauna through the app on her phone. Before he left, he told her he needed to add his own email to the account, only briefly to check if the connection was working. For the next 6 years, the system worked exactly the way it was supposed to, and the Donnies had no reason to think about that afternoon again, until they received that call from ADT on April 23rd, 2020. The employee calling told Shauna that the technician who had installed her camera back in 2014 had granted himself remote access to it on the installing day, and that access was never removed. He had been using it to view footage from inside the Donnies' home ever since. When Shauna asked what he had been seeing, the employee had no answers. They couldn't name him and wouldn't say how many times he had logged in.
7 hours is a long time, but we're talking 7 years. You don't know what to think. So you find yourself just trying to go back, like, okay, what were we doing during this time?
Unfortunately, the Donnies weren't the only family getting the ADT call. They were one of more than 200 plus. A few weeks earlier, another ADT customer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area was going through their Pulse account settings when they noticed an email attached to it that didn't belong to anyone in the house. Naturally, they called ADT to ask what it was doing there. When the company looked into it, they found that the same email was attached to 220 separate customer accounts across the metropolitan area. And every one of those systems had been installed or serviced by the same technician at some point. Which raised the obvious question, how does one technician end up signed into 220 homes? The answer was buried in ADT's own software. Technicians are allowed to temporarily attach their personal email to a customer's account during install. It's a diagnostic feature meant to verify the camera feed before they leave. So, every time he serviced or installed a system, he either gave the same diagnostic excuse or didn't bother explaining at all. But he never removed his email, so the Pulse app on his personal phone kept him signed in as a co-owner of these homes. Now, some could argue this was just sloppy work, a tech forgetting to clean up after himself. Once or twice, sure, but more more than 200 times is not a coincidence. So, how did this slip past ADT for so long? It turned out ADT didn't have any system in place to catch such a massive breach of privacy. The company never alerted its customers and didn't even have an automated check flagging the same email showing up on dozens of accounts, which meant he could keep logging in whenever he wanted. In April 2016, the same technician installed a system at the home of a couple with 2 young daughters. The camera covered the living room and the kitchen. Court records would later show he logged into that account 322 times. At another household, one where 5 children under the age of 18 lived, he logged in 361 times. In September 2017, he set up a pull system for the Preddy family. Their teenage daughter Alexia wasn't comfortable with indoor cameras, and she told her mother this on the day of the installation. But the ADT technician assured them that the system was perfectly safe. Years later, when the full scope of the breach came to light, ADT found that he had accessed the Preddy family's live footage almost 100 times during the years Alexia was still a teenager. Court filings would later show the wide-angle lens and its placement allowed him to view her undressed, getting ready for bed, and during moments of physical intimacy. This technician was Telesforo of Isles. He was 35 years old, married, and the father of 5 children of his own. He'd been with ADT for 17 years, and by 2020 was working as a senior supervisor in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. On May 18, 2020, Shauna Dottie and Alexia Preddy each filed federal lawsuits against ADT, accusing the company of allowing Aviles to exploit its pulse system and spy on customers through their own home cameras. Soon after, more lawsuits followed from other victims. In the federal case, Aviles admitted that he took note of households with women he found attractive and repeatedly targeted homes of young women and married couples with daughters. He would open the Pulse app on his personal phone, scroll through the list of homes attached to his email, and watch for live footage of any private moments. Across the 4.5 years covered by his federal plea agreement, prosecutors counted more than 9,600 unauthorized logins across roughly 200 accounts. That works out to 5 or 6 logins a day, every day, for over 4 years. Aviles pleaded guilty to computer fraud in January 2021 and was sentenced to 52 months in federal prison that June. ADT had revoked his access to all 220 accounts months earlier, but the only person who knew exactly what he had seen and in which homes was Aviles himself. On the evening of September 3rd, 2017, a young Dutch woman named Rilana Hamer came home from the supermarket and started unpacking her groceries. She lived alone in a small house in Bremen, a quiet town in the eastern Netherlands, with her dog. Rilana had recently bought a small indoor security camera from her local discount store for around €35. It was a Maxter ACT IPC01, a white plastic unit with a motorized base that could rotate across the room. She set up the camera on a shelf in her living room, figuring it would be easy to check on her dog throughout the day. The camera also had a built-in speaker, which let her talk to the dog even when she wasn't home. That evening, she was putting her groceries away when she heard a low, mechanical voice from the living room. When she went to look, she saw the camera rotating on its base, slowly turning back and forth on its own. Her phone was the only thing she used to control it, and that was on her bed in the next room. Figuring it was just an updating glitch, she went back to the kitchen. But on her bed in the next room. Figuring it was just an updating glitch, she went back to the kitchen. But a few minutes later, the sound came back. This time, the camera turned and pointed directly at her, and a man's voice came through the speaker. It said, "Bonjour, madam." Staying composed, Rilana asked who was there, but no one answered. To see if the voice would speak again, Rilana moved to the side and noticed that the camera was following her. That's when the voice came through again, this time saying, "Hello, madam. Is everything all right?" She immediately ran across the room and pulled the plug from the socket. Later that evening, a friend came over for dinner. Rilana told her what had happened, and the two of them decided to test the camera again. They placed it back on the table and plugged it in as
Yeah! Destroy!
What did you do?
Soon, the voice came back.
No.
Rilana posted the video on her Facebook account where it went viral immediately. By the start of the next week, Dutch National News had picked up the story. And other journalists looked into it. The explanation turned out to be disturbingly simple. Every camera the manufacturer shipped came with the same default password, 123, along with the device ID printed on a sticker underneath each unit. With just those two things and the free app, anyone in the world could connect to any of these cameras, watch the live feed, listen through the microphone, and talk through the speaker. Looking up the manual for this camera, it does mention that the default password is weak and recommends changing it before use. But nowhere in the app itself, the thing you actually interact with during setup, did it ever tell the users to do that. Few people read the full manual for a €35 camera from a discount store. You just download the app and start. So Rilana never knew that she had to change the password, and that she was far from the only one. When the tech journalist tried connecting to other cameras from the same manufacturer, he got into 4 unsuspecting households within minutes, using nothing but the manual and the free app. Each one of those people, just like Rilana, had no idea anyone else was watching.
That's fucking cool, though. Bunker Busters.
In late 2010, Ferial Nijam woke up in the middle of the night to heavy metal music playing at full volume through every speaker.
Okay, that's a troll.
Confused and disoriented, she didn't know how it turned on. And despite her trying, the volume level didn't go down, as if someone else was controlling the sound system. But there was no one home except her that night. Ferial was a Canadian fashion model who had spent most of her adult life around cameras. She had walked at the Berlin Film Festival in the mid-2000s and built a career where she was looked at on her own terms. By her late 30s, she was in a long-term relationship with a partner who lived in the States. He was, in her words, quietly controlling. According to her, he wouldn't just touch base with a text. He would call me on FaceTime and ask to say hi to the person I was with. At the time, she thought it was attentiveness, and she trusted him enough that she eventually moved into his home in the U.S. It was an impressively designed house with a high-tech smart home system, which covered everything on the property, from lights, heating, blinds, security cameras, to the sound system. All of it ran through a single integrated platform her partner had set up. For someone who'd spent
Bunker Buster!
cameras and production sets, living with so much technology around didn't feel unusual. But at some time during the 2010s, the relationship started to fall apart. Her partner moved to a different city, while Ferial stayed behind at his house, with his credentials still running everything around her. And that's when things started getting strange. She'd fall asleep at a normal hour and get jolted awake by sound blasting through every room.
You're asleep in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden, over the sound system, comes this blaring music that startles you awake. That's what happened to me.
By the time she was on her feet, it would cut out, just as suddenly as it had started. And she'd be left in the house.
Holy shit.
Soon enough, the lights started to behave as she'd switch them off for bed, and they'd flick back on, sometimes flickering for several seconds before stabilizing. She would experience the same with her TVs, which would switch on by themselves and shut back off as soon as she got near the remote. At first, she tried telling herself it was just the system acting up. It was a big house, and every inch of it was wired with technology, so some level of glitching was expected. But even then, she couldn't help shake off the feeling that something was off. In an interview with CBC's Marketplace, she said, "It's almost as if the house is haunted." Sadly, in a way, she was right. It started when she began receiving messages from friends. They mentioned things she had been with when she worked for the phone. He'd been using every piece of smart tech in the house to watch her and remind her he was still there. On more than one occasion, he'd also sent her direct threats.
I need you to stop manipulating the lights. What is wrong? Just can you please leave me alone? You're not supposed to call me. I'm not bothering you.
For someone who had spent her entire life controlling exactly how and when she was seen, being watched in her own home without ever knowing felt like a different kind of violation entirely.
He was able to monitor me, using our security surveillance cameras, even remotely, from thousands of miles away.
Ferial tried to shut the system down, but her partner had configured everything from the start and held all the login credentials. Left with no other options, she contacted the local police and explained everything. Unfortunately, the response she received only deepened the sense that she had nowhere left to turn. The home wasn't in her name, and as far as the responding officers were concerned, that was where the matter ended. In the end, Ferial realized that her only real way out was to leave the home behind entirely. She gathered her dogs and made her way to a local women's shelter. On the 8th of August 2025, a woman named Brenda took a Ring doorbell camera off its mount and brought it inside her house to charge. It was something she did every few weeks. The camera ran on a battery, and recharging it was a routine part of owning one. But this time, she noticed something strange about the camera. The blue ring of light around the lens was on. On a Ring doorbell, that light only comes on when the camera is actively streaming, recording, or in the middle of a live two-way call with someone signed into the account. None of which should have been the case while the device was unmounted and sitting indoors. So Brenda picked it up to see what was going on. And that's when she started hearing a voice coming through the doorbell speaker. Someone was speaking through the device in real time. And by the way they were laughing, it's clear that it wasn't someone who'd accidentally connected to the wrong camera. Whoever it was, they were taking their time terrorizing Brenda. Brenda pulled out her phone and managed to record only some of the interaction. But the voice went silent in a few seconds, and the blue light switched off shortly after. She later posted the video on her TikTok account. The comment section was flooded with people who couldn't believe how easily someone could gain access to a Ring device, along with others sharing similar experiences. One comment read, "I have cameras all over my house, and I've one in my bedroom. And a few days after I got them, I was sleeping and got woken up by someone snoring through my camera. And it wasn't no one in my house because I didn't log into anyone else's phone yet because I just set them up." By now, the pattern should sound familiar. Just like the Maxter cameras Rilana had set up in her living room, a doorbell camera is only as secure as the password protecting the account behind it. A weak or reused password is often all it takes. And if you look at every case in this video, this exact vulnerability keeps showing up, regardless of the brand, price, or how trusted the company is. So that's also what most likely happened here. Now, as I was researching this case, I found multiple people in the comments suggesting a different theory. They argued that what Brenda heard wasn't a stalker at all, but signal interference from someone else's baby monitor bleeding into her doorbell, and that the voice on the audio sounded a lot like a dad talking to his baby. This theory sounds plausible at first. Wireless devices do cross signals all the time, and analog baby monitors are notorious for picking up audio from neighboring devices operating on similar radio frequencies. But Ring devices aren't analog based. They work by connecting to your home's Wi-Fi network and streaming audio and video through Ring's own encrypted servers. So, any sound that comes through the doorbell speaker has to be sent through the Ring app first, by someone logged into the account. In other words, for a man's voice to come through Brenda's doorbell speaker clearly and in full conversation, someone had to be on the other end of the Ring app, with full access to her device. So I've been down here for a few minutes now.
Just found this little clearing, so
This is 3 True Scary. Three True Scary Stories with Video Footage by Mr. Nightmare. Alright, guys.
This story years ago is without a doubt one of the most horrifying things that has ever happened to me. It's one of those stories that makes me think in retrospect that I'm lucky to be sitting down writing this. I say that because it wasn't until hours later that I realized just how lucky I was. I'll try my best to tell this story, but please go easy on me. I'm not a writer, and I always hated writing in school. I'm sharing this story as a reminder that you never know who could be out there in the world with dark intentions. A few months before the incident I'm about to describe, I moved to a quiet, mostly rural area. I don't love the hustle and bustle of the city, so to be in a quiet neighborhood with not a lot going on was ideal for me. It didn't take me long to get acquainted with the surrounding area, specifically the forests around my new neighborhood. The area I lived was heavily wooded. There were forests and paths everywhere to hike. Practically right outside my door was a path that led deep into the woods. I spent weeks exploring the forest and finding things. It's not a state park or anything like that, just some kind of local nature reserve where you can park and hike. I thought it was cool that I had my own little private path leading to this park. So every Saturday, I would wake up early and hike in the woods around my house. I would try to find new areas in the woods I had to the public restroom, rest on the benches if I needed a break, then head back through the woods to get back to my house. Whenever I would find a cool, new area in the woods, I would record a little video. Nothing crazy. Just how I was feeling. The videos were just for me. I didn't post them online. Instead, I just wanted to document my travels and one day put them all together in a video for myself. I found some truly amazing places on some of the travels. One time, I found this little waterfall. The waterfall fell into this creek. The water in the creek continued to flow down this hill. It felt almost dreamlike the way it looked. The creek was just hidden in the middle of the woods. It felt like it was my little secret. The place I found on the day of this story was nothing special. I'd been hiking for a while. I found this clearing in the woods. There was a small swamp there. I found it kind of peaceful. Even though it wasn't this amazing channel like the creek, it still felt peaceful to me. I remember feeling uncomfortable that day when I was walking through the woods. I didn't know why. I just had that bad feeling. I felt on edge. Every sound I heard in the woods made me tense up. I had walked these woods so many times at this point, and I had never felt like this before. So when I got to this point, I thought to record a video. I recorded a video that lasted maybe a few seconds describing the area and how I was feeling. As soon as I was done recording and taking in the area, I started making my way to the public trails. Eventually, after making it to the trails, I made my way to the public restrooms. As I walked out of the bathroom, this man in a black hoodie, purple hat, and sunglasses came right up to me and said, "Hey there." He said it with a lot of confidence, almost like he knew me. I said hi back politely. I felt surprised. We made some weird gestures, bumping into each other, and I just laughed awkwardly and walked away. As I was walking away, I could hear him following me. I turned around, and he waved and said, "Looks like we're going in the same trail." I smiled, but I was feeling major creep vibes from this guy. I told him I was actually waiting for someone, and I was just He nodded and said okay, and continued walking several feet. Then he turned around again, walked back toward me, and asked if I could help him. He said that his car was messed up and that he needed help getting it going. He said he knew how, but his hands were too big, and he asked if I could use my small fingers to pop the hood. According to him, his car hood sticks, and he needs small fingers to pop it enough so he could open it. It seemed weird and sketchy to me. I made a comment about how he just said he was taking the same path as me, and how he wants my help with his car instead. Then I doubled down on the statement that I was waiting for someone, which wasn't true. He laughed and said he was going to take that path to get to the car, even though the parking lot was in the other direction. My creep meter was overflowing at this point, and I considered just going into the bathroom, locking the door, and calling someone to pick me up. I didn't know if this guy was just trying to get my number and he was just bad at talking to women, or if he was an actual creep. Thankfully, this couple walked by, and I walked right up to the woman and greeted her as if I were an old friend. The woman was confused at first, but she took one look at my face, and I think she realized what was going on. The creepy guy started to linger awkwardly for a second. It was like he was trying to see if I was bluffing. I started making small talk with the couple, even going as far as to ask them how their parents were doing. A minute or so passed when the creep started walking in the direction of the parking lot. When he was out of earshot, I thanked the woman and her boyfriend for playing along and told them that this guy was just standing outside the bathroom waiting for me, and that he wouldn't leave me alone. I know I didn't directly tell him to leave me alone, but come on, read the room. Not to mention, he was giving off major creep vibes, and me being alone in the woods, I just wasn't taking any chances. I watched the man get into a small red sedan. I believe it was a red Chevy Cruze, and then he drove away. They offered to call the police, but I told them that that was okay. The couple stayed with me for a little bit, made sure I was okay, and that the purple hat man didn't come back. Then we went our separate ways. They did insist on driving me home, but I told them that that was okay. I'd rather walk since I didn't live that far. I practically ran back to my house that afternoon. It was such a weird day. From that horrible feeling when I was hiking, to the creep at the bathroom. I just couldn't wait to get home to relax a whole lot. Unfortunately, the lights and night was about to shatter. I started going through the pictures and the video from that hike, and something caught my eye in the video. Playing it again, my heart stopped.
Just found this little clearing, so I'm gonna have to the bathroom here in a minute and head home.
In the background of the video, just in the tree line, was the man with the purple. While I was talking, giving my hike update, I could see his purple hat and black hoodie just over my shoulder. It was the same man from outside the bathroom. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to call the police. I started to freak out thinking about the man. How long had he been following me? What he really lived. What was terrifying to me is that I had no idea what he intended to do. I was and I stopped. The same car that was supposed to be when he got right in and drove away. Once I started adding up the pieces, I called the police department and reported everything. The police searched the area and conducted a little investigation, but as far as I know, they never caught the guy. I never hiked alone after that, and I moved away about a year after this happened. I hate that I don't even know that couple's name because they honestly probably saved my life. Be careful out there, my friends, because you never know who's out there, lurking just behind you, waiting for the perfect moment. Thankfully, that purple hat guy never got his moment, and I hope he never does. I found the video from that day and attached it to the story. On its own, the video may seem harmless, but once you know all the details, this short clip becomes a nightmare. So this is probably the wildest thing that's ever happened to me. And to make it even more insane, I can't believe I actually caught it on video. Let me set the stage. My friend Ron and his wife Tina had just bought this new house. This was probably like 4 years ago, I think. At first, everything seemed amazing for them. A nice little house in a safe and quiet neighborhood. A few months after moving into the house, I met up with Ron for some drinks. I asked him how the new house was treating him. He started acting a little weird. When I continued to press him on the house. He finally caved in and told me what was bothering him. He and Tina were convinced that the house was haunted. I can be kind of a jerk sometimes, and I started to laugh as soon as he told me. I asked him why he thought his house was haunted, and he gave me the entire story. For starters, apparently someone did die in the house, something the real estate agent did in fact disclose before they bought the house. So this wasn't surprise, and it's what actually made the house cheaper for them to purchase. Because of that little bit of information, Ron and Tina had convinced themselves that the ghost of this dead person was haunting their house. I'm not a believer in ghosts or anything that's paranormal. It's just not my thing. I'm not a horror or true crime fan. That's probably why I always dismiss people when they start talking about spirits or anything like that. I started pressing Ron a little more. I said to him that just because someone died in the house, it doesn't mean that it's haunted. He continued to give me more of the story. He told me that every night, he and Tina wake up at some random hour. There are strange noises that seem to come from everywhere in the house. He insisted that it wasn't just the pipes or the house that he said it was like something bumping into furniture and moving around. They would wake up in the morning and furniture would be slightly moved. Things that were on the counter would be misplaced or moved completely. Ron said that on one occasion, he left his favorite Miami Dolphins coffee mug on the counter, and in the morning, it was gone. They searched everywhere in the kitchen, and it was just gone. Ron claimed that he didn't think it was anything paranormal at this point. He was still just weirded out by everything. Ultimately, this must have just been some kind of weird coincidence. It all changed a few nights before Ron decided to tell me the story. Just like several nights prior, he and Tina were in the middle of the night. It sounded like a crash coming from the basement. Wanting answers, he went down to investigate, even though he was terrified. The basement is loaded with boxes and storage, so he said it was impossible to be able to tell if anything had just fallen over. Apparently, while he was down in the basement, something moved in the corner of the room, and Ron ran out of there so fast and hadn't gone back since. He started calling all these strange things happening in the house paranormal activity, like the movie, and just like in the movie, he was terrified that if he kept antagonizing it, things would get worse. All of this seemed ridiculous to me. I was trying not to laugh because I could clearly see that Ron was upset. I was politely trying to remind him that paranormal activity is just a movie, and you can't antagonize something that's made up. That set him off. He was well aware of how he sounded, and that was part of the reason he was so upset. He knew this sounded crazy, and yet he hadn't slept well in weeks. Now he's terrified to sleep at his own house. He even told me that he and Tina had slept at a hotel the last 2 nights. They didn't want to sleep in the house until they could figure out a rational solution to this absurd problem. He was practically in tears trying to explain this to me. He said it was like an extreme phobia. Ever since he went into the basement, he's convinced himself that something is down there, and he said he's physically unable to go downstairs. I still couldn't tell if Ron was pulling a prank on me or if he was serious about all of this. Even as I write this, I'm shocked all over again that Ron and Tina thought their house was haunted. This just seems so irrational to me. I was starting to feel bad for Ron. He was so upset, he could barely get the words out now. Because I thought this was ridiculous, I offered to check the basement for Ron thoroughly. I told him that they just need to calm down a little bit and come to their senses. I said I would check every corner of the basement and make sure no ghouls are present, and that whatever noises and weirdness they're experiencing can be explained somehow in some way. He was hesitant at first because he thought my being there might antagonize the spirit, but I shut that down quickly. I remember Tina fighting with Ron on the phone after this because she didn't want me to check it out. She was 100% convinced that this was paranormal in nature, and I, along with both of them, would be in trouble if I went and looked in the basement. After the call, Ron said he would drive me to the house, but he was going to wait outside, and that we couldn't tell Tina. I was a little sketched out by that, but I wanted more than anything to prove to them that nothing was down in their basement. When we got to the house, Ron begged me one more time not to antagonize the spirit, just in case. I just nodded and walked into the house.
Me being me, I fully intended to antagonize the imaginary ghosts to prove that they don't exist. Before going into the basement, I walked around the house, and nothing seemed weird or out of the norm, other than a nasty odor. And before anyone starts to think that the odor was like demonic in nature or whatever, it wasn't that kind of odor. It was like body odor. Finally, I went into the basement. It was a mess. There were boxes everywhere. After looking around for a second, I started shouting for the ghosts to appear. And just like you may expect, there were no ghosts or any other paranormal events happening. I was about to leave, and then I decided to have a little fun at Ron's expense before leaving. I pulled out my phone and started recording a little video. I was recording in selfie mode just because I was only going to show this video to Ron as a joke. I made a comment in the video about how there aren't any ghosts. As you can see, there's nothing but storage down here. I turned around and lifted the camera a little bit to show the storage over my shoulder. And as I did that, I thought I saw something weird in the corner of the screen. So I moved the camera back a little bit, and sitting right there was some creepy old guy. Not a ghost or demon, but a sickly old man. I wish I'd continued recording, but out of instinct, I just turned it off and ran.
So I've been down here for a few minutes now, and I haven't seen any ghosts, monsters, or anything activity at all. Except all of your useless storage.
The door and held it shut. I heard the old man screaming on the other side of the door. The scream was more of a painful wailing. I continued to hold the door shut with one hand and called Ron with the other. When he answered, I blurted out that he needed to call the police because there was a man in his house. Not a monster or a ghost, a man. While this was happening, the man made his way to the basement door and tried opening it as I was holding it shut. I started yelling at him, and he just kept screaming. Then the screaming turned to him repeatedly saying, no, 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 over and over again. It probably took like 10 minutes for the police to show up. I tried to hold the door for the entire wait. I kid you not. This guy tried opening the door the entire...
I gotta turn off my watch so I can play it.
I kid you not. This guy tried opening the door the entire time. As soon as I heard the police cars roll up, I let go of the door, and the man busted through it. I should have waited until the police were in the house. There was a moment when I was standing face to face with this old man. He was clearly insane. His eyes looked almost plastic. He screamed in my face so loudly that it knocked me over, and then he ran out the back door of the house. I tried chasing him, but the old guy was deceivingly fast. I started yelling for the cops, who were just now jogging through the house with no urgency whatsoever. I told them that the guy ran out the back door, and I didn't see which direction he went. The cops looked for a bit, but couldn't find the guy. Ron called Tina and told her what happened. She was angry at first, but then just in shock over everything. We went into the basement to check everything out after that. The awful smell was clearly the body odor of this man. In the corner of the basement was a small pillow and a little blanket, and the smell was the worst over there. Also next to the blanket was Ron's Miami Dolphins mug. I gave the cops the video, and I don't think they caught the guy. At least not to my knowledge. After all this, Ron told me that before this happened, Tina never locked the doors. She grew up in a nice neighborhood, and since this was also a nice neighborhood, she didn't think anything horrible would happen. Either one day while they were at work, or in the middle of the night when they were sleeping, this man just walked into their home. I know she checks the locks about 5 times before going to bed. She's supposed to show you that no matter how nice an area you live in, if you leave the door unlocked, you'll always be inviting unwanted strangers into your house. About a month ago, I was asked to house and dog sit for my boss. It was only for a few days, and his dog Max was the easiest and most chill dog ever. Not to mention, my boss is rich, and I needed the money. So this job was an easy yes to make some extra money on the side. One thing that sucks about me is that I struggle to sleep when I'm not at home. I won't use the word insomniac, but it sometimes feels like that. I guess it could be nerves, but I don't know. I just don't sleep well when I'm not in my own bed. Being proactive and knowing I was going to stay up late, I brought over my Nintendo Switch. I decided I was finally going to play the remake of Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. That was all I did almost the entire first night. The next night, I took Max outside for a late night walk a little after 10 p.m. I walked him just around the neighborhood a little bit. While I was walking back, I thought I saw someone standing by the boss's house. I slowed down and tried to squint the best I could, but it was just too dark to tell. As I got closer, I didn't see anyone. The darkness will always play tricks on your eyes, especially if you're somewhere you're unfamiliar with. I got back inside and started playing my game. It was about 1 a.m. I remembered that I had left my charger for my phone in the car. I went inside to grab it. A few houses down, just standing outside, was a person. They weren't doing anything objectively wrong or scary. It was just weird that someone dressed in all black was standing outside at 1 in the morning. That's weird. It was only because they were standing there that it was weird. Ultimately, I ignored it. My thought process was that it was just happened to be outside at the same time. The stars. After all, I was also outside. Playing the game for about 4 hours. I started scrolling on my phone. When I kept hearing this noise, and it was starting to annoy me. I couldn't tell exactly what it was, but it sounded like it may have been some friends rubbing against the house. I jumped back inside because a person was running. I got up and went to the other window. By the time I got crazy, but I just didn't feel that threatened for some reason. The person was trying to break into the window. The person was yes, but when I looked, he was running away. I realized there isn't a way for me to put this that doesn't make me look like an incompetent idiot for not calling someone. Even if this person wasn't trying to break in, they were still trespassing. Clearly up to no good, but I'm an idiot, and I just let it go. The next day, I called my boss and told him about the weird visitor the previous night. Believe it or not, he was even less bothered than I was. He told me that in the neighborhood behind his house is a bunch of houses where young teenagers live. He told me that they cut through his yard all the time. One time, he even caught a few of the kids looking into his house windows. He claimed they were harmless, but it still gave me an uneasy feeling. I didn't care if they were just kids. I wasn't trying to get spied on. That night, I decided to take Max for another walk. This time, it was a little later. We went at 11 instead of 10. When I was coming back to the house, I was looking for any signs of a person, and just like the night before, I thought I saw someone standing right by the house. Instead of slowing down, this time I started to speed up. As I got closer, it was definitely a person standing outside my boss's house. When I was close, I saw the person run behind the house. I brought the dog inside the house and then ran back outside, trying to scare whoever was messing with me. I went to the backyard and looked around with a flashlight, but I didn't see anyone. I looked all around the outside of the house for several minutes, and I saw nobody. This started to feel a lot like teenagers trying to mess with me. Like this was totally something I could see teenagers doing. I was thinking that my boss was right. I went back inside and made sure everything was locked. I didn't think I was in danger, but I wasn't going to take any chances. A few hours later, I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I decided to look out the window in the front of the house. Sure enough, someone was standing outside. Not right outside the window or anything. They were under the streetlight that was on the grassy median across the street from the house. I just watched the person for a few minutes. It was weird. The person didn't move at all. They were just standing there, looking in the direction of my boss's house. I still didn't know if this was a teenager playing. It's a weird one. I didn't see anyone else around, so I couldn't imagine the joke's payoff would be good. Then I made probably the single dumbest move
Раньше
I've ever
обычного
made in my life.
навелись голубица, клюква, брусника. Созревание их ускорило знойное солнечное лето. Это лишь одна из 170 промысловых баз в таежных угодьях Иркутской области, площадь которых
человек легко привыкает к самым удивительным впечатлениям. Когда по вечерам миллионы телезрителей располагаются у домашних экранов, они уже не удивляются фантастическому калейдоскопу красок и форм. Между тем, в последние годы зритель, сам того не замечая, стал потребителем нового поколения телевизионного оборудования, цифрового. Аппаратуру, которая использует этот прогрессивный метод, а он заключается в том, что позволяет делать с изображением все, что угодно, перемещать по экрану, менять масштаб, синтезировать буквы, символы, цвет, можно увидеть на стендах советского раздела. Каждый экспонат, а их здесь около 1000, говорит о достижении.
I went outside and started shouting at this person, trying to get some kind of reaction. Nothing crazy. I was just saying hello and asking if I could help them with something. They still didn't move. After that, I announced to them that I was going to start recording them. I just wanted my boss to believe me. That's why I decided to record the person. I started recording and tried to focus on the person. It was dark, so I couldn't see that well. While I was recording, with no warning, the person started to charge after me. This wasn't a light jog either. This person was hauling fast after me. I started to run away. I didn't mean to stop recording, but I did. I ran back inside and locked the door. I looked out the window, and I didn't see anyone. I waited for 10 minutes. I still didn't see anything. I walked away from the door and sat in a chair in the dining room just to process what happened. I still didn't know if this was a real attack or not. While I was sitting there, the doorbell rang. I didn't move or say anything. The doorbell rang again, and I still didn't move. I heard them try to open the door once, but thankfully it was locked. After they tried to open the door, I heard a calm and rational voice say, "Have a good night." I didn't know what was happening here, and between the chase and this experience at the door, I was completely paralyzed. I didn't want to call the police, but eventually I did. Even with the video, the cop was confident that nothing could be done. The cop was a nice guy, and he promised to keep a squad car in the area for the rest of the night in case this person came back. I showed my boss the video when he came back, and he looked sick. Right away, he said that person was not one of the teenagers. He didn't know who it was or have any idea who it could be. The most likely answer is that it was just some wicked person out in the night who happened to see I was outside one night, and for whatever reason, this person just decided that they were going to terrorize me. So far, as of me writing this, my boss told me that he has not had anyone show up to the house and has nothing weird to report. He even bought ring cameras for the front and a motion camera for the back of his house, just in case. What bothers me the most is that I have no idea why this happened, and I never will. Why would someone just randomly target me? Some people I talk to think this was just an elaborate prank, but I don't think so. Who would risk getting arrested for a prank like this? In that few-minute window of being chased and having him come on the front doorstep, I felt like my life was in real danger. Prank or not, this is something I'll never forget.
Big. Developing a battery pack that could go 600 miles on a single charge. We're still not seeing 600 miles now, and this was 2019. Not to mention a floating hologram heads-up display, 7 seats, and a design that I think I'm physically attracted to. Oh yeah, and the seats were ergonomically redesigned from scratch, because Mr. Dyson personally hates the lack of lumbar support in normal cars. I'll kind of see his point, to be fair. Not on those most comfortable getaway. The slight problem is Dyson ended up reworking so much that they eventually realized just to break even, they would have to sell each of these cars at today's equivalent of $275,000. I don't think we have actuals. And it took our good friend James burning through $900 million of his own personal money to come to this realization. At which point, he had no choice but to scrap the entire project, go home, and sit on a chair that probably gave him a back pain. 6 out of 7. Lads, we want some lunch? So sometimes the biggest cost of a mistake is to your reputation, like it was with Taco Bell. Because in 2025, this company implemented an AI-powered drive-through system in over 500 of their restaurants, hoping to improve customer experience. And let's just say it wasn't very good at taking orders. Oh, my absolute favorite is when this guy asks, "Can I get 18,000 water cups, please?" The way that the system just instantly dies and hands it over to a human worker is class. And just a repost of this AI breakdown on YouTube is currently sitting at nearly 30 million views. And so, responding to the fact that their AI's greatest achievement was becoming a meme, Taco Bell's chief digital officer, Dane Matthews, told the Wall Street Journal that they were going to think carefully about where not to use AI going forward. Gee, thanks, Taco Bell. Will that not hurt you before? I mean, just watch McDonald's cancel their own AI drive-thru after it went viral for putting bacon or ice cream and 9 sweet teas in one order. They keep trying. They keep failing. And in the process, they just keep funding their own funerals. That's the rest. So they're like, what about yours? Go ahead, first. It's pretty good. But it's more embarrassing for Will Smith, who used to be this and you can get this exchange specifically it's clearly inevitable. See them in phone footage from the hits. Ultimately, in photo itself, you can directly cross-reference things like the Swizzy sign was there in his Swizzy show, although it actually says Swizzy. So most likely, the social media team just used an AI tool to put together the highlight reel. They fed in genuine photos and videos, but because the tool itself was AI, it introduced all of these unintended side effects. Either way, damage is done. Everyone thinks Will Smith fit. He's the AI warranty. Speaking of men with image problems, you've probably seen Elon Musk's Tesla Optimus humanoid robot at this point, even if it was only as a costume. Musk has stated that the Optimus robot will eventually account for 18% of Tesla's value, which I'll say something. Tesla have a track record of doing exactly this, putting human-operated robots out there and deliberately being very lax about letting people know that these are not fully autonomous. Add in the fact that Musk is currently chasing a $1 trillion payout from Tesla, where one of the goals that he needs to hit is to ship 1 million bots, and it starts to make sense why he's doing way too much to convince you that the future is now. Maybe just hang on until you have a working prototype before showing it off. At least that's what Nothing did when they wanted to impress customers with the camera on their new flagship phone 3, holding a bunch of demo events in stores. 5 photographs were shown off on these in-store demo units with the text, "Here's what our community has captured with the phone 3. Do you want to know what's crazy? Zoom into the reflection of this one, and you can actually see the DSLR camera, not phone 3, that took it. And then, with a little internet sleuthing, fans came to realize that, in fact, every single one of these shots was, in fact, a publicly available stock photo. Nothing eventually came out to claim that they were just placeholder images that they had intended to replace, but the units had gotten to stores before that happened. Malicious or not, though, this is a pretty costly, extremely avoidable PR moment to be having while being the underdog just as you release your first ever flagship smartphone. But Nvidia has definitely lost a lot more rep, and didn't have a huge amount to lose in the first place, ever since they pivoted their focus towards providing graphics cards to giant AI companies, kind of ignoring their original customers, the gamers. But then, instead of deciding that it was time to listen to the players, Nvidia just decided to go full-on friendly fire with DLSS5. So DLSS, which stands for Deep Learning Super Sampling, has been one of NVIDIA's superpowers for a long time. It's basically a smart graphics technology, which means that instead of each generation having to keep doubling the amount of hardware they're giving you, they can instead upgrade the resolution and the frame rates in your games using clever machine learning tricks. However, the latest version, DLSS 5, goes one step further to upgrade even the lighting and the textures too, which sounds fantastic, right? Who doesn't want a prettier game? But let's actually think about it for a second. This scene of Grace from Resident Evil Requiem is a scene of her heading to investigate the house where her mum was murdered in front of her eyes. But NVIDIA's AI slop filter doesn't know that. It just sees a face that looks a little dark and traumatized, uses its training data, which tells it that faces look better when they're yassified with blush and eyeliner like your resident ego, but in the process completely flies in the face of the possibly muscles that the developers spent handcrafting the very deliberate way that they wanted her to look in the scene. Or why does the professor from Hogwarts Legacy need more wrinkles, guys? It really feels like this is just AI seeing an older person and going through the thousands of stock photos it's been trained on to make her more old. It's funny because CEO Jensen Huang responded to the overwhelming backlash, arguing that it's not about just putting an AI filter over everything, and that instead DLSS 5 is meant to be
integrated with the artist. So it's about giving the artist the tool of AI.
which made it extra awkward when it came out that the developers of these games found out at the same time as the public that their games were being altered in this way. 5 out of 10. Nvidia's gamer cred was already in the bin. Now it's in hell. And while we're down there, there's a few fails so far where there's been some mystery as to whether or not it's been a deliberately perpetrated crime or not. Not so much the case with ransomware, a type of malware that locks you out of accessing your data so that criminals behind the attack can sell it back to you. But at least there are companies out there like Digital Mint who specialize in negotiating those ransom payments down. Right? You know, people who truly understand the criminal mind. Yeah, about that. And demanded millions in return. But this is where it gets truly unhinged. When those victims panicked and they called Digital Mint up for help, who did Digital Mint assign to the cases? Well, none other than one of the guys that attacked them, Angelo Martino, who, in basically the human embodiment of the evil Kermit meme, had managed to put himself in a position where he was playing both sides and negotiating with himself. It must have been some tough negotiations, because he managed to get all 5 of these companies to pay up. One of them even paid $26.8 million, and it was a non-profit. What? Definitely a non-profit now. Can you believe that just months before, Digital Mint featured one of these guys in their employee spotlight? And I quote, "We bridge the gap between good, hardworking people and bad actors." They had
no idea how right they were. And basically, everyone lost it. The ransomed firms ended up paying out $75 million. No one's ever going to call up Digital Mint again without thinking twice, and the 3 employees involved have been charged with up to 20 years in prison each. 6 out of 10 pounds. But where it goes beyond funny into just straight up terrifying is when a man named Sami Asdufal develops an app to allow him to control his DJI Romo robot vacuum using a PS5 controller, simply because he said sounded fun. That's not the scary part. Unfortunately, Asdufal didn't realize his own coding power. The custom remote control app he built pretty quickly using Claude AI code accidentally granted him control of over 7,000 DJI robot vacuum cleaners across 24 countries the second it connected to DJI servers. How? Because instead of DJI encrypting the data from its devices like they should have, it was literally laid out to him in plain text. Zero authentication required, allowing him complete access. So, okay, he could now vacuum anyone's house on a whim. That feels like a Doofenshmirtz level scheme. Evil, but ultimately harmless. Until you realize that these robots all had cameras and microphones, and that he also happened to have access to the live feeds from them. Not to mention the floor plan of each house that the vacuums had mapped out with all of their sensors, and their location too, via their IP addresses. Thankfully, he was a nice guy about it. He immediately reported the flaw to DJI, and they immediately rewarded him with a 30k payout. But just imagine how catastrophic this could have been if he wasn't a nice guy. Remember, as Dufal didn't hack into DJI servers or do anything complex, he simply became god of all robovans by accident. And it's just mad to think that someone can so easily stumble into so much personal data from you. At least when you're using Surfshark VPN, our sponsor, anyone who might be sort of Will Smith concert, if you wanted. Now, at least Sammy had the decency to feel bad about his accidental data theft. Can't say the same for ChatGPT, which is meant to revolutionize search by accessing everything on the internet and bringing it to you. Now, that would require having the rights to a lot of content that would end up expensive and time-consuming to acquire. So naturally, OpenAI just ignores that part. Why? Go fast and break things, of course. Who needs the law when you have a ridiculously ballooned valuation? So it's a shock to absolutely no one then that a group of authors and publishers are suing OpenAI for copyright infringement. But it's what's happened as part of their investigation that's been the dramatic upset. Because the group managed to acquire leaked Slack messages and emails from OpenAI in which their employees openly discuss the mass deletion of 2 datasets the AI was trained on that they knew consisted of pirated books, hilariously named Books 1 and Books 2, by the way, in case it was unclear. So not only did they have other people's pirated data, but they knew full well that what they were doing was wrong, and tried to dispose of the evidence. So a New York district court has now ordered OpenAI to hand over those messages, and if those messages demonstrate willful infringement, and I don't really see how they couldn't. This could take the damages anywhere from $750 per piece of stolen work to possibly $150,000 per work. An insane amount on the scale of data that these guys are working with. We don't know the total fines they could face yet, but we can get some idea from a recent lawsuit against Anthropic for similar copyright infringement, which saw them settling for $1.5 billion. Settling. 7 out of 10. But while the exact consequences of that are still up in the air, OpenAI has recently had an even bigger oopsie that's already cost them some very real, very large dollars. See, in 2025, the company announced a noble new mission that doom scrolling wasn't bad enough as it was, and that what humanity really needed was an entirely new short-form video app called Sora that lets you doom scroll content that was entirely AI generated. A slop talk, if you will. And to kick off the fun, while downplaying the dystopian impending threat of anyone being able to create a deepfake in like 2 clicks, Sam Altman gave all users global permission to create videos using his own likeness, which of course immediately backfired with a litany of embarrassing videos mocking the guy. Like this one of him begging for GPUs at a doorbell camera. I can't train anything. Please, if you have anything, A100s, 3090s, I'll take them. Physically stealing art from Studio Ghibli. Get in the back. No, too late. Hey, come back here. Free art, baby. Or this one of Altman hosting a Hunger Games style competition, forcing contestants to fight over literal slop. And then, of course, this, which I present without comment. Yeah. Turns out,
Super Sam did this to himself for absolutely nothing, because Sora shut down just 6 months after starting. Let me try and put into perspective just how much of a flop this slop was. Sora generated in total $2.1 million in revenue. Sora was costing them, at peak usage, around $15 million per day to run, all while the user base was collapsing under their feet with a 66% drop in just the first 90 days. And as if that wasn't already enough damage, OpenAI also, in the process of losing Sora, lost an investment deal with Disney. Disney was going to pay OpenAI for a stake in the company, which would have also given Sora users access to 200 plus characters from across the entire Disney universe. How much was Disney going to pay them? $1 billion. Oops. Now, you already know that in 2022, Elon Musk purchased Twitter for mountains of money. We've been living with the consequences ever since. There is one consequence that you might have missed. That Musk is now being sued by the investors who originally put their money behind that deal. And the reason is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a courtroom. So do you remember when Musk was trying to wiggle out of buying Twitter? He'd already committed at this point, but he was trying to pull away because he said too many of its users were actually bots, not people. And by the way, he said this on Twitter, publicly, in tweets. Well, those tweets tanked Twitter's stock price. That made all of these investors panic. They believed him. They assumed that the whole thing was falling apart. And so they hurriedly sold the shares they had, losing millions compared to what they paid for them. But the deal wasn't off. Twitter took Elon to court and forced him to buy Twitter anyway, at the original agreed price of $54.20 per share. But all those investors who sold their shares at a loss, they never got their money back, which leads us to now, where a California jury has declared Musk liable for misleading them with his own tweets.
Ooh.
Tweets which he himself described under oath as stupid tweets. You just can't make this stuff up. The man who bought Twitter to protect free speech is being sued for what he freely said, stupidly, for up to $2.6 billion. And if you think that's a lot of money, then you're not ready for the metaverse. Do you remember when Facebook rebranded to Meta out of nowhere and made a massive bet on our near future becoming almost exclusively virtual reality? The hub for which was meant to be Horizon Worlds, an online VR world where you can hang out with all your other friends who definitely have a Quest headset. Now, because they were trying to take VR from merely something that people use to play games into this alternate reality where we'll all one day live and work as well as play, it was important to have the infrastructure for users to visit different worlds and create their own for whatever use they might want. Like, for instance, taking a fake selfie in front of a fake 240p Eiffel Tower, while trying not to let the fake existential dread creep in too much. Wait, no, dread was real. Well, it seems like Meta are starting to catch up with the rest of us who already know that no one's interested in hanging out in VR, whether it gives us legs or not. Because this year, they announced that they were removing Horizon Worlds from the Quest App Store, deciding instead to focus 100%
of them.
100% their effort on mobile instead. Because yes, this is
And 7 o'clock, I'm be switching games, but anyways.
exactly what home use space has been yearning for. But then, a glimmer of
Teachers slash childcare workers. What's the worst case of helicopter parenting slash my child can do no wrong you've ever seen? I had a boy who kept acting out in class. Things like talking to classmates while I was giving directions, giving screen dances, hitting the boys sitting next to him in the arm, grabbing the boy's chicken during class. I kept notes and informed the academy director about what was happening, and he was pulled aside after school a few times to talk about his behavior. One day, at the end of class, he reached across the table and forcefully flicked the girl on the forehead. She complained, and he caught sit while I let everyone else leave and told him to stay seated while I discussed his behavior with the academy director. If nothing else, being the last one to go would be a sort of punishment. The director chewed him out, and apparently he told his mom about it because his mom came to the academy to say that her son was an angel and they should be reprimanded for exaggerating and lying about the situation. Cue the director listing off all the crap her son had done in the last few weeks, telling her that her son was no longer welcome at the academy and never saw him again after that. So I know that this is going to be the theme, obviously, hence the question, the title topic of this video, but it's just amazing. Like, parents like this are the worst, the enablers that think their kids do no wrong. This is the reason why the future of this world is so bleak. I hate to say it, but it's true. Next story. While studying,
Teachers, what was the strangest encounter you've had with a student's parents? I had a father, a large man, who came up to my table and said, "So, Mom, tell me about this bastard son of mine. I've already heard plenty of crap from everyone else." He looked very angry. Taking a breath, I told him what a wonderful student his son was and how respectful he was, and what a joy it was to have him in my class. He left, looking a bit skeptical. The next day, his son came to see me before school started and thanked me. He said I was the only reason his dad didn't come home and beat the hell out of him last night. I was shocked to learn as we talked that he was being abused regularly. I did turn the father into social services, and I later found out the son went to live with his aunt. I also learned many years later that the boy had done well in school, went to university, and is now working in a job he loves, and has a loving family of his own. Moral of the story, teachers, be very aware when criticizing a student. Choose your words carefully. It could save a child from harm. Next story. Not a teacher, but if I may relay a story.
Or I might play Medieval Dynasty. I don't know yet. Oh, it's the Mortician room. Okay. right beside Giant Ass 100. We're on the east wing, okay. Le public est beaucoup très heureux.
Going up.
I was a rather
Third
hefty kid in
floor.
junior high. My art teacher
Doors
was a rather
opening.
harsh individual who never tried to hide his thoughts. To be blunt, he was a bully to many students. He often made comments about my weight, which was pretty upsetting to say the least. One day after a particularly
Going up.
nasty verbal attack, including calling me a human garburator,
Sixth
my
floor.
parents decided it was time to
Doors
confront him.
opening.
They scheduled a meeting with the teacher and the principal. So I'm sitting there in the principal's office with my mom, stepdad, principal, and art teacher. The issue of his bullying is discussed. The art teacher looks at my mom and says something along the lines of, "Well, now I know where the fat comes from." Stepdad leaps to his feet. "Don't you dare talk about my family like that." Our teacher jumps up, goes toe-to-toe with my stepdad. "You have a problem with your principal says, 'Gentlemen, wait, please, I urge you." Mom tries to get between stepdad and our teacher. Teacher shoves mom touch my wife. Our teacher shoves stepdad, "Do something about it." And stepdad breaks our teacher's nose. "Okay, how dare you not tell us how this ended? If anything happened except for the suspension or probably just firing of the art teacher, then I'm gonna be so mad. There's no way he sat in front of you guys and the principal and says, 'Well, I know where the fat comes from.' There's no way, right? That's insanity. This person shouldn't be allowed to interact with humans, let alone teach kids." Next story. I work with technology and education, and ran across this story from a teacher at the school where it happened. Second grade boys doing cartwheels in the middle of class during reading. The teacher reached for the student before he cartwheels himself into the desk and potentially injures himself. The ring on the teacher accidentally scratches the kid's arm, but doesn't break the skin. When the student goes home, the mother notices the scratch, and the student tells the mother the teacher scratched him on purpose because she was angry at him. The mother goes to the school, runs through the front office, and down to the teacher's classroom. The insane mother grabs the teacher by her hair, beats the teacher's head into the desk multiple times. By the time the office staff chase her down, the lady runs out the back of the school where her friend is waiting, and they speed off to wherever. Teacher is left with a bloody and broken nose. She had only been teaching as a second career for a few weeks. Yeah, I wonder where that kid learned that someone hurt it because they're mad at him. Really doubt where that thought could have come from. People like this really feel like it shouldn't be parents. That's obviously a very harsh, broad statement and an over-exaggeration. But like, it kind of does feel like it, doesn't it? How can you be trusted to raise a human if this is how you act as an adult? Like, gosh. Next story. This sucked, and I was in a strange situation yesterday. Not quite in a this age, but the same kindergarten class Monday and Tuesday. The plant made a note that Zaria, a sweet kid with severe disabilities, spina bifida, I think, should take her gloves and hat home, but should leave them at school. One day I must have overlooked her, putting them in her backpack in the chaos. This would usually just be parents leaving a set of gloves or hat at school for a big deal. Next day, the playground supervisor sends a kid to get Zaria's gloves and hat, and I looked. None in the room, none in the backpack. I must have sent them home by accident yesterday, I said. "Oh, no," said the playground helper. "We can't send her gloves and hat home." Her mom throws them away. My jaw hanging open, I couldn't help but ask for an explanation. We live in an extremely cold city. Some parents just aren't completely with it, if you know what I mean. I still can't get my head around it. I went out and bought a new hat, gloves, and took them in today for Zaria, by the way. The nicest, prettiest ones I could afford. Next story. Parent-teacher conferences. First year paid teaching. Parent comes in, literally with 1 minute to go before we're off for the night. So we're chatting, and her daughter's a great student, so it's an easy conference. Then I feel something hit my head. Mouse! Me, looking around, but who's throwing a mouse at me? Parent. No, a real mouse. Look! She points at the ground, and I see an actual, real-life mouse. I look up and see it had been dropped from a ceiling tile missing in the ceiling. It scurries underneath my coworker's desk. He's also having a conference with a parent. Somebody yells to him, "Mouse!" And he looks down, stomps the mouse with his boot, and continues the conference like nothing happened. Best part of it was at the next staff meeting, one of my coworkers gifted me a bike helmet covered in mouse traps for protection. Next story. I had a kid once who was rather weird. Very impulsive, odd sense of humor, aggravated the crap out of the other kids. I met his mom at a conference tonight and everything was explained. She was a close talker, continually did that phlegmy sinus snort thing every 10 to 15
Doors
seconds,
opening.
and went on several conspiracy theory tirades that had nothing to do with anything we were discussing. In 15 years of teaching, it was rare to meet a parent for the first time and not have all of the classroom concerns clearly explained. Next story.
Doors
I had a parent tell me
opening.
I was obviously a racist, and that it was clear to her that I was prejudiced against biracial people like her child. She absolutely tore me a new one about assigning her daughter detention for her constant tardiness and refusal to do class, and that I was obviously targeting her heritage. I invited her for Important note, I live in a small island community. Everybody knows someone who knows you. People frequently ask you to see if they're related to you or connected to you. I am 22 years old, about to have my first PTC. Finally, a parent comes up to me. So, yo, Miss Rachel, is your dad my dad's name? Yes, sir. I remember you running around our apartment complex about this tall, indicates how tiny I was with his hand. Nothing but a diaper on. I was at a loss for words. Next story. I once had a student who wasn't living up to his potential. This is high school, and I teach video, focused on digital photography, graphic design, and video editing. During the editing portion of the year, the student who had been excellent all year and had expressed massive interest earlier in the year regarding said portion decided he didn't care anymore. He turned in making projects as a quarter because this wouldn't even happen. He apologized to school.
You are. You've ruined his entire GPA. This is the field he most wants into, and you're discouraging him with grades like this, etc., etc. I politely explained the situation to her and her husband, to no avail. This wasn't their son's fault. He was only given an assignment and a time frame. When that wasn't enough and I gave him a second chance in the field he most wants to get into, he declined to fix any mistakes and raise his grade. This is when the mother basically leans across the table into my face and says, "All you male teachers are the same. You only care about looking at these young girls. They get special treatment. I know your kind. You make me sick." Now, at the time, this was my second year teaching, and being in my late 20s, I was one of the youngest males on the staff. I was pretty shaken by this, because we all know how fine a line must be walked when dealing with accusations of this nature. I continued to listen to her rant for about 5 minutes while her husband, who I actually felt kind of bad for, just sat silent with his head down. The student seemed completely unfazed by his mother's tirade and just sort of smirked. She concluded with, "You either give him another chance or regrade his project on equal terms." They went a few minutes over their allotted time, and I had another set of parents waiting in the hallway listening to all of this. After the madness settled and they left the room, the waiting parents came in and just said, "Wow." I was pretty uncomfortable, and I told them it was a rare instance, but apologized nonetheless. As they were the last visitors of the night, I immediately went to my superiors and told them what happened. It should be noted the mother is a prominent member of the school board and also a teacher in the same district. Luckily, my principals backed me up as she had been belligerent to others as well. She never once apologized, and I had 3 more visits throughout the year with her. Now I cringe during PTAs, not because of a student's poor performance, but because we live in a day and age where the student is always right. I haven't changed the way I grade or teach, but bloody hell, this is a problem I encounter every year more and more frequently. TLDR, mother of a student got in my face and accused me of being sexist towards students because her son earned a bad grade. Next story. The joy of teaching is that there's no shortage of awkward moments. It was discovered that a female student was signing my last name on all of her schoolwork. We are not related. Needless to say, it was a big freaking deal. There were multiple meetings with the administration and the police to see if it were an inappropriate relationship. I had no idea any of this was even happening. She wasn't in my class anymore. Finally, they let me know about it. Once it became clear I had no idea what was going on and that we were not in direct contact. The final meeting on the subject was with the principal, vice principal, guidance counselor, both parents, the student, and me. They asked her the million-dollar question. Why are you signing your last name as OPs? The student went into a very long, emotional account of her parents' divorce, how she lost respect for both of them, and how she no longer wanted their name attached to hers. She chose mine, as I was, quote, the only respectable man in her life. All this while I'm sitting next to the parents, about 90 minutes after I even learned about this situation. It was a crazy day. Well, OP, sweet that you were a positive role model in a hard time in this person's life. However, yeah, that's gonna be a little strange. In a very awkward situation, sitting next to the parents. Yeesh. Next story. My mom is a speech and language teacher in a very affluent area. Every teacher has to work with the difficult parents, but my mom has the added luxury of these difficult parents being filthy stinking rich. A parent at her school had a kid who wanted to be in the annual talent show, but failed to sign up, so his dad is actually suing the school because he believes that because his child is in the special ed program, he was entitled to a place in the talent show regardless if he signed up on time or not. Please note, this kid has a speech impediment. That's it. He is fully functional mentally and 100% capable of signing up on time. Next story. I was assisting as an early literacy teacher for ELL students from Mexico. There was this one little girl who would throw a tantrum if she didn't get her way, and would look at me right in the eyes as she would pour her drink on herself during breakfast. She was just seeking attention, but her behavior was so disruptive she would learn anything. She did other things that were not appropriate for a child at that age. We called her mother in to talk about the child's behavior. The mom walked in the next morning 15 minutes before class started and went on a rant how we were so explained that the child's attention seeking she was now disrupting her lesson with the other we gave the class more assignments and went back to the speaker to just get it over with and elaborate on the child's behavior during class and that she was obviously not getting enough attention at home. The mother started making excuses about she her daughter because she's working at her boyfriend now. This ticked me off. She then called her daughter over and started threatening her, saying if she misbehaves again, she's going to send her back to Mexico. No one will love her anymore. That she'll be banned in the streets like a dog. She then told the girl that she was going to take her to the bathroom and spank her for her lies. The teacher says she is stupid. She then started leading the girl out of the class to the bathroom and brought the child back and told the mother she has to leave. She said I better not call CPS and then I called administration, explained what happened, and they said that they would handle CPS and everything else. And I took the girl aside and explained that she was stupid. I looked her, gave her a sticker, and let her draw her head down. Now, I'm no expert on the matter. I have a weird feeling that when you say, you better not call CPS, I'm probably gonna call CPS. It's a weird thing to say. Even if you haven't shown you've done anything wrong, it's just like, if you do something wrong, it's a thing, but then like, we're real on, so made it easy for them. Hope that kid found a more loving home environment. Next story.
these kinds of guys don't show up to parent-teacher nights, right? So when they do, you just gotta take a deep breath. He didn't really start well. Are you the guy that's teaching my daughter? He said in that low, kind of throaty growl. Sounded like the bike he rode, I guess. But what could I do but answer as professionally as possible? Yes, your daughter is a student in my Canadian history class. I have her marks here if you... Yeah, alright. She's been incredibly afraid of tests, exams, and school. For some reason, she never misses your class. Always tells me about it. Don't know how you're doing it. She really likes your class. It was my first year of teaching. This student and a few other kids had serious test phobia. In particular, she would freeze up, start crying, serious anxiety issues about a test. So I wanted to help her out and I let her write tests at lunch, where she could eat. There was nobody but me around and I would watch over her saying things like, "You studied this, remember? We made notes on it for your study guide." Insurance policy on my part. Students get an extra 5% if they create and hand in study notes before the test. In about 90% of the cases, the 5% bonus is unnecessary. They tend to do better by dint of making the notes anyway, along with getting her to make her own test. I'm not kidding, I let her write her own questions for the test, long answer questions, mostly. I also had a fondness for tea when I was teaching, so if she was overwhelmed, she was allowed to make tea and think about her answers. By the end of the semester, she was a different girl. No more test phobias from her or a group of other students. Still, that big dude coming into my classroom and how quickly the situation turned 180 is pretty memorable for me. Edit. I miss teaching pretty badly. I'm glad so many of you wish for a teacher like me and are happy with what I did. That makes me feel great. But I feel like I should be more humble to point out that I made a bunch of mistakes as a teacher as well. There are most of the Yankee numbers. It's terrible. The really good teachers are the ones who put me, the completely new teacher, under their wing and said, "This is how you manage a class. These are some tips to help your students pass. Here's how you talk to parents." Teachers like Tim, Doug, Betty, and Julie, who are still teaching today, who've had thousands of students pass through their classrooms and still stay past the bell to listen to students, talk to guidance to see how kids are doing, and juggle marking, lesson planning, field trips, professional growth, and mentoring the panicky new birds who are just jumping into their own classrooms with gentle words like this. This one's terrible, but you'll forget all about it tomorrow. You should too. Keep moving on. I loved teaching, but the teachers who inspired me deserve the credit. Next story. My first grade teacher probably told you about my mother's first parent-teacher conference about me. The way my mother told it, the teacher told her I was having a really hard time learning how to read. My mother couldn't help but burst out in hysterical laughter. When she got herself under control, she told my teacher I had been reading books since I was 4, that I went to the town library and checked out adult books to read, that I definitely did not have a problem learning to read. Mom came home and asked me why I hadn't told the teacher I could read. I told her she hadn't asked me. Then I told her that I thought I could not go to school and do all right. With my twin sisters at home, that was not even an option. Next day, 3 strange adults took me out of class. I had no idea what was going on. They gave me a newspaper and had to read an article and tell them what it said. Then they gave me a magazine, which was a little harder to understand. Then they gave me a book. When I went back to class, I was excused from reading class. I would take books to school and read them. I was the shy hillbilly kid that constantly had classmates correcting my pronunciation. Radio English was my first foreign language. When I suddenly became teachers, they became a lot nastier. They didn't so much bully me as constantly correct my pronunciation. When we moved at the end of the year, they had taught me radio English. Story. I have a teacher friend who was ranted/screamed at by one of her students' fathers during an open house.
Alright, guys.
With all of her...
So, guys. I'm gonna turn off this now. I'm getting bored of this. Wait, I got one more map to do. And then I'm gonna play some Red Dead or which one? Whatever comes first in my mind, and I'll play. But for right now, I don't know. Have I checked? Oh.
Students and their parents around. The dad totally lost it and yelled in her face, called her a communist, and ended up storming off. My friend was a kindergarten teacher. He was berating her after she explained that at her school they teach their students to share art supplies. Next story. I had to tell a mom that we couldn't let her son in the school because he wasn't cleared medically. The kid had a heart condition and was often aggressive enough to be put in physical restraints, so we needed a doctor's note to say he was healthy enough to be put in one. Well, he shows up without one, so I call mom and say we can't let him in. She goes nuts. She says, and I quote, "Do I need to come down there and go black woman on your butt?" I responded by saying that now she was threatening me, and that if he didn't get picked up, we would have to call the police and say she was neglecting him. I then hung up. Next story. Taught third grade a long, long time ago when teachers were allowed to run their classrooms, and mornings before school were a time when the kids and teachers talked a lot. We also played all kinds of games and got pretty wild sometimes. Did I say there were 48 students in a class? Anyway, a parent comes into a parent-teacher conference and tells me what her child told her happens in my class. The story was quite exaggerated, so I looked her squarely in the eyes and said slowly, "You believe half of what your child says happens in my class, and I'll believe half of what your child says happens at home." Never had another parent complain. Next story. Not a teacher, but my mother has been one for 20 years, so at their house growing up I have heard a lot of stories. At an after-school conference, a student's parents wanted my mother to stop giving homework in the middle of the week. Not because it was difficult or due to the kid playing sports, that's another story, but because on Wednesday nights, that was when their family went to the local Walmart and spent 3 to 4 hours in the store. Not shopping or getting groceries, they just walked around. A normal family outing for them. Next story. This female dog straight up accused my parents of oversized gold-plated paperclip thievery. Not a teacher, but my parents had a surreal encounter with one of my teachers. This woman called everyone Oscar, including the plant, called us tubs of lard, or as stupid as tubs of lard, and she would make one poor student her female dog each month, demanding they fetch things for her like the whiteout that's already on the desk she's currently sitting at. Anyway, I told my parents about halfway through the school year and they scheduled a conference. She denies everything, but she's so flustered that it's obvious she's lying, and my parents told me that if this continues, they'll go to administration. My dad says at that point she basically starts having a manic episode, moving quickly around the room, talking a lot and straightening things. So my parents leave. Later that morning, once classes are about to start, a girl from her, the teacher's home class, talked to me.
She wants to know if your parents stole her paperclip.
I said no, and thought that was that. Except it wasn't. I had 2 classes taught by her that day, and she harassed me before and after the first class, and during the second class about
Oh, I
where her
might play
paperclip
Crusader
was,
Kings.
asking
I
why I
don't know
wouldn't just
yet.
give it back. I even went
Anyways,
home and
I'm gonna
asked my
switch
parents if they
games.
could somehow have accidentally taken it, and we searched everywhere. She kept on me about it for the rest of the year. My sister had her 2 years later.